Welcome to another episode of Business Pulse. Monitoring. Welcome to another. Welcome to another episode of Business Pulse Radio. Examining the heart of businesses today. Since money is the lifeblood of every business, we monitor and track how current financing and investor capitalization is flowing today with the man who seems to know, Mike Brett. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing good here. Well, Business Pulse. What's the pulse? What's your take on the pulse of today, this week out there in the world?
Confusing for everybody, but we're gonna straighten it out on this show. At least for small businesses trying to raise capital. There's a lot of confusion going on out there, especially in the stock market, the bond market, and I'm not an expert in those areas, but I do deal with a lot of publicly traded companies, deal with a lot of small businesses. Today, I want to talk about the realities and the myths of raising capital for a small business.
And boy, there are a lot of myths around that.
Yes.
A lot of misinformation, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. The one thing that's changed everything since about 2012 was the Jobs Act that was passed. Now, the Jobs Act was passed to help small businesses access the capital markets. Before, it was highly regulated. There was certain things you could do and certain things you couldn't do. And it made it really problematic for small businesses to raise capital. With the passage of the Jobs Act, they had several key elements that help small businesses raise capital. First off, equity crowdfunding was instituted for small businesses.
And if I'm not mistaken, it took them about a year to figure out the rules for that.
Yeah, and it's still kind of a work in progress, but it is out there for companies. Now, the equity crowdfunding is different from Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and those types of crowd reward type of websites.
Exactly. You don't just get a T-shirt for support in equity crowdfunding.
Yeah, exactly. Equity crowdfunding, you have to go certain elements. You have to file a Form C with the SEC, which is like a prospectus. So you need a securities lawyer to put that together. And then you upload that to a funding platform, such as MicroVentures or Flash Funders or some kind of SEC-approved funding portal.
Is Start Engine one of those? I've seen people use
Start Engine. You could do that also. So you need a SEC-approved platform to upload your documents, your videos, your business plan, all the information. Now, a lot of businesses feel they can stop right there. Well, I put it up there on the platform, the money's going to roll in.
Yeah, right. It's that simple.
No, it doesn't work that way. You have to, once you go through that process, you have to actually engage marketing. You have to go out and find the investors. You have to direct them to that particular platform where your information is lodged so that they can view it. Now, once they look at all your information, there's an invest button, so they can push the invest button and invest $100, $500, whatever your minimum investment happens to be. But again, you can't stop there by just uploading your information to a platform. If you don't have a marketing budget to go out and get investors to look at your information, you're going to fail.
So let me ask you a question. We had years ago, before the equity crowdfunding rules took place, when it was just reward crowdfunding. Hey, I want to do a movie. I want to do a record. Please help me, support me, and you'll get a T-shirt. Or a lot of we've had businesses come in here. They used it as a proof of concept. I got a new product, a new coffee mug that I want to come out with. Let me put it on there and see if people will pre-order it, if they'll and then if I get enough orders, I'll go make it, or I'll make more of them. That seemed to be the use of crowdfunding. Now you're talking about actually raising capital through equity crowdfunding.
Right.
And one of the things I wonder about is if it follows the same pattern that reward crowdfunding did, which is to say, when we had the guys from Indiegogo in here many years ago, only a third of these things reach their goals. There a lot of people just assume there's a flood of people ready to give you money, only if they find you on the platform.
Yeah, that's the myth that a lot of entrepreneurs have, that that people are out there with their checkbook just waiting to write a check for a deal they've never really heard about.
Yeah, right.
It just doesn't happen that way. And that's a good question. The equity crowdfunding is very different than Indiegogo or Kickstarter and some of those other rewards-based equity or crowdfunding. With equity crowdfunding, you're actually selling equity, common stock, preferred stock, to investors.
And this is to anybody. They don't have to be a qualified investor and have $1 million outside of their house and all these other kinds of things.
That's true, yes.
Right.
It's open to accredited and non-accredited investors. And again, that's one reason for the Jobs Act. It was to kind of open up the field of investments in pre-IPO companies, private placements for companies, because normally individuals were shut out of those offerings unless you were an accredited investor as defined by the SEC, certain net worth, excluding your house, etc.
Isn't it $1 million or something?
Yes,
like
$1 million and $250,000 in annual income, and there are a few extra requirements.
And that's
also.
$1 million exclusive of your house. When
Yes.
you throw in the house, a lot more people qualify, but you got to have.
Yes. Yeah.
So people, the idea, and this was under the Obama administration. I always wonder. I just got to ask you a question here. I've always wondered why the Obama administration, which was so unpopular among Republican business types, didn't do more to tout this, because it seemed to be the kind of open, deregulated space that businesses have been asking for years.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't want to be political on this show, but Obama just was not business oriented.
Right.
I don't really think he had a lot to do with the Jobs Act, even though he signed it. It was really pushed through by Congress. Who really are, the heartbeat of the government when it
Right.
comes to small businesses. And the small business community got behind it to push it through. Obama signed it, but I don't think he was really behind it. And you really didn't hear much about it.
Didn't hear much about it for
until he was out of office, and now it's kind of all the rage. I know I went to a conference in 2016 in Las Vegas, and everything was about equity crowdfunding, about 506c private placements, and Reg A Plus, which we'll get into those in this show also. But
Right.
those are all new elements of raising capital for small businesses that were incorporated into the Jobs Act. But again, it really didn't get some legs under it until just a few years ago.
And part of it was the SEC took their sweet time trying to figure out the rules. And it seemed to take like a year or more once they passed the act to write the regulations.
Right. And then they open it up for questions and comments and people, back and forth. And then finally, it gets listed in the registry, and then it becomes, effective for everybody to start using. But now it's kind of the way people should be raising capital. And I emphasize that because I still get emails and phone calls from potential clients who really don't have a clue that the Jobs Act was passed and what it's all about and how it can benefit them at raising capital. They're still fixated on this, paying thousands of dollars to get a business plan put together and then emailing it out to people they don't know and just blasting it out, and or buying a list of so-called venture capitalists and emailing it out to people and saying, write me a check for $1 million or $5 million. And that just doesn't work. It never worked before, and it doesn't work now. And I try to explain to them, look, you have the Jobs Act, you have equity crowdfunding, you have 506c private placements, and Reg A Plus. There are certain fixed elements in those regulations that allow you to effectively raise capital from accredited and non-accredited. You can advertise, you can promote, you can market. A lot of things you couldn't do before the Jobs Act was passed. It's like it falls on deaf ears. They just don't. And even though they're young, they're not old people. They still don't get it. It's like they're still fixated on the old way of raising capital.
Well, and that was my first misconception. I think most people don't realize the power that's out there and what you can do that you couldn't do before.
And the main thing is you can advertise.
Yeah.
It used to be let me back up a little bit. There's only two legal ways to raise money. Either a full registration with the SEC, which is very time consuming and expensive, or you file for
The
one.
so-called private placement type.
Well, that's the exemption. That's
Oh.
from registration.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to get to. The second element is if you don't want to go through the time and expense of a full registration with the SEC, you file for one of the exemptions under Reg D for a private placement. Now, before the Jobs Act, you would file under Reg D to do a private placement, but you couldn't advertise, promote, market. You had to deal with what they called pre-existing business relationships
Right.
with people you really had a deep relationship with on a business level to invest in your deal. But you couldn't advertise, you couldn't promote, you couldn't do seminars. So it really hampered everybody as far as raising money. So again, the Jobs Act was passed to allow businesses to get out there and shake the trees.
So 3 types of new investments, it sounds like, that were created. First is equity crowdfunding, where you can go to anybody. You have to go through one of these qualified
Yeah.
platforms.
Exactly.
And you put all your information up, and then you got to drive people there because you're just one page and millions of pages, I'm assuming, of people looking for money here.
Right, and let me the platform cannot advertise and promote your offering. And that's the big mistake that people think. All right, I put it up on one of these platforms, where's my money?
They're going to push it out.
They're going to push it. They can't. By law, they cannot market a specific offering. Now, they can put out a press release that says these 10 companies have just uploaded their information to our platform, and
Right.
if you want their information, come. But they can't take one specific company and put a big marketing push behind it.
They can't have the editor's pick of the week or
No.
some that you pay for a prominent position like you do in Google to show up number 1 in the search.
Right, correct.
All right, so you're on this platform, and I again, any statistics? I mean, how many of these people succeed in raising the dollars they're after?
Well, that's a good point. Probably around 50% actually raise the kind of money that they need to succeed. Now, with equity crowdfunding, you can raise up to $1,070,000 in any 12-month period.
$1,070,000.
Yeah, where that little odd figure, that was for the cost of living or something, I don't know, but it's an odd number. But most people who use the equity crowdfunding under Form C usually go for about 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 max.
Okay.
And they use that as seed money to either put a prototype together so they can go to the next level of raising money, which would be under one of the private placements under 506C.
The typical angel investor kind of round.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So they use the equity crowdfunding for a couple of $100,000, and then they take that money and they either do a larger offering where, like under 506C, you can raise unlimited amount of money. You're not, there's no dollar amount that you have to stop.
Right.
So, but most people don't have the money to pay for the legal fees for a larger offering because they can't get expensive, for putting a private placement together and dealing with the SEC when, with any questions and comments that may come back. So again, people will start with the equity crowdfunding and then kind of morph into a private placement under 506C. Then the next one was Reg A Plus, which is a public offering if you want to go that far. Now, what I mean by that is you can fill out the Form 1A or have your lawyers put the offering together, file it with the SEC, again, which is a prospectus. And once it comes back from the SEC, green lighted that you can go ahead and you're basically effective, then you can start raising up to $50 million in any 12-month period from accredited and non-accredited investors. You can advertise, you can do seminars, you can get on my radio show,
Wow.
you can do everything. And then if you want to take it, you can also list your offering on NASDAQ, OTC markets, or the New York Stock Exchange if you can
Really?
qualify that. So that gets you from a private company into a publicly traded company.
Never
Yeah.
knew that. What's that again? That's
Reg A Plus. Now, the reason they call it Reg A Plus is it used to be just called Reg A, Regulation A.
right. I've heard of that.
And you could only raise up to $5 million under the old way. Well, when the Jobs Act was passed, they put the plus and allow you to raise up to $50 million.
So the first one is equity crowdfunding.
Yes.
You can raise up to $1 million and what was it, 70?
70, yeah.
Okay.
1 million.
1,070,000.
Yes.
You know, I think I just have to say, I think part of what confuses people is all the nomenclature and all the different rules and all these bizarre names, 501(c)(3)s. But I think that just adds to the confusion. All right, so there's that first round, and you work with people in helping them put together a crowdfunding campaign?
Oh yeah, I did a crowdfunding for a vertical farming company. They were trying to raise some basic seed money of $50,000. I ended up raising them $250,000 in 60 days.
Wow.
Now you have a time frame. Usually it's 90 days to raise your money, and then they'll take the platform will take the offering down. We were able to raise $250,000 in 60 days. You know, for that particular company. I have some larger offerings that I'm working on right now with clients. But yes, I've done that.
And if you don't hit your goal, does the money get refunded, or do you?
Yes. Yeah. Now, it really depends on what platform you're under. Some of them it's an all or nothing. If you're trying to raise $200,000 and you don't raise it, you have to give the money back. Other ones, if you have a minimum of, let's say, $25,000 to a max of $500,000, and you raise the 25, they'll let you keep the 25.
Got it. Okay.
You know, so it just depends on the platform.
All right. So they go out and they raise this money and they use it to build a prototype or to get things going and as proof of concept. And then the idea is to go back into the private placement market, or would you say stay in this new Reg A plus platform and continue to use some of the Jobs Act provisions?
That's a good question. Again, it depends on the business. It depends on where they are in their business cycle and what they're trying to accomplish. Again, most companies use the equity crowdfunding to raise $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000. Then they use some of that money to, kind of flesh out their business a little bit more, but they use the bulk of that money to pay for their legal fees or marketing fees for a larger offering under 506C as a private placement.
And what can that run? Because I know just writing the document can be tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, under equity crowdfunding on Form C, the legal fees are around $10,000 to do that. Under a 506C private placement, to do a private placement, you need a PPM, a private placement memoranda, subscription documents. That could be about $25,000 in legal fees.
Yeah, right.
For that.
Exactly.
A Reg A Plus could cost you anywhere from $65,000 to $200,000 in legal fees, depending on the complexity of the transaction, the deal, and everything. So
and a lot of that is the disclaimers, the disclosures, the due diligence, all that kind of stuff that they put into this. Right?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because a PPM, a private placement memoranda, is a risk disclosure document, and it's to cover your behind,
right?
Because all it does is talk about you, Mr. Investor, you could lose all your money if you put it in here. This business is brand new; it doesn't have an operating history. If they don't reach certain goals, you could lose your money. So you're signing this document stating that you understand. So it's really a disclosure document. It's not a business plan, even though a business plan is incorporated into the document.
Right.
But it's really a risk disclosure document.
And is there something similar in equity crowdfunding, or do you just go to the site, look at their plan, and say, I'm in, I'll give you some money?
That's another good question. There is what's called Form C. That it's a form that the SEC supplies to you, or you can get it off their website. And it's like a mini prospectus, almost like a PPM. It has all the information, what the company is going to be doing, their use of proceeds, everything like that. And that's all uploaded on the platform too. So in addition to the business plan, videos, photographs, working prototypes if you have one to describe, in addition to that, you have the Form C that's uploaded, which acts as a risk disclosure document also. Everything is, in real estate, it's location, location, location.
Right.
When raising money, it's disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. That's it.
And people are always horrified. I know friends of mine who've gone through this, and they're like, oh, my God, I'm trying to get somebody to give me money, and I'm spending half the document telling them why it's a risk and they shouldn't do it.
Well, again, in this litigious society, you have to do that, because I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've seen and read all kinds of horror stories out there where, a business puts their documents together, but they leave something out, or the attorney leaves something out,
Yeah,
and
okay.
an investor puts his money in, and then he's got a sharp lawyer, and for some reason the investor wants his money back, even though the document says you're not entitled to your money back. The investor starts a lawsuit, et cetera, et
didn't
cetera.
tell me-
You
you
didn't
didn't-
tell me this,
Yeah, exactly.
So-
All right. So again, we got about less than 10 minutes left here. Let's go through any of the other parts of the Job Act. You meant equity crowdfunding is the most unusual. I think is still the most misunderstood part of the Jobs Act, and perhaps the one that most people are missing when it comes to raising money here. What others? You mentioned some other ones there.
Well, the one point that I want to make on the Regulation D 506C private placement, you can only take investment capital from accredited investors. Okay,
Yes, right.
Under the equity crowdfunding was non-accredited and accredited. Now, this is an important point that people really need to take note of. Under 506C private placement, you can only take investment capital from accredited investors, and you need to take what the SEC calls reasonable steps to verify that they are indeed accredited
you
investors.
can't just take their word. huh?
Exactly. The old way used to be, here, sign this suitability questionnaire that says you're accredited. Everybody lies. They check off all these boxes and sign, yeah, I'm accredited, when they're not. Well, the SEC said, look, we're going to allow you, Mr. Businessman, to advertise, promote, go on TV, radio, and promote your offering, but you can only take money from a sophisticated person who's accredited, and you need to go out and take reasonable steps to verify. You've got to get bank statements, brokerage statements.
Really?
You got to
Wow.
get tax returns. You've got to get a letter from their attorney and their CPA attesting to the fact that they meet the status of an accredited investor. If you don't do that, then you violated security laws, and you lose that exemption under 506C.
Do you have to do this prior to showing them your secret formula here, your secret plan here, or do they do it just prior to investing?
You have to do it before you take their money.
Right.
In other words, you put all your legal documents together. You put it out there for the investors to find. You can talk to them about it, but then you have to have them fill out the necessary paperwork. And then there are third-party companies that do the verification. I always get companies that call me, and they're broke, so they have very little money, so they don't want to hire a third party to do the verification. I tell them, look, you're in a minefield if you're trying to do it yourself. If you don't have a backroom office that's sophisticated, and you don't verify that they're accredited investors, you could really run into problems with state and federal regulators. So it's better to hire a third party. Now, what I do with my clients is I only work through broker-dealers, licensed FINRA broker-dealers.
To present these offerings
Right.
to their clients.
And then
right?
their back room, their compliance department takes care of all the verification, verifying the investor, and they put their license on the line and says, yeah, we verified all these people, they're accredited, and you go from there. So I
Makes
don't
sense.
take any chances.
That makes sense. All right. Couple minutes left. I'm getting a little clear. The clouds are parting a little bit here for me. All right. So the takeaway from today is the Job Act changed the landscape.
Yes.
Allowed you to go after not just accredited but non-accredited everyday investors, and to advertise, to reach out to these people.
Those are the key points, yes.
Now, what other sorts of things did they create after equity crowdfunding? You mentioned just mention them, because we'll have to come back and do another show
Oh, yeah,
specifically on those.
Yes.
You mentioned a couple other ones, and I don't want to.
Well, the takeaways, again, are the equity crowdfunding, the Regulation D 506C,
That's
and,
the one, right,
and the the Regulation A plus, which is a private. It can be a private company, but it can also get listed if you follow all the guidelines. You can also list it on the exchange.
Got it.
And there, last year I believe there were probably about 15 that went that extra step and got listed on NASDAQ. Kathy Ireland, the fashion model.
Yeah, right.
Her company Level Brands, which has since changed the name. They're more into the CBD cannabis area
Really?
right now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
they changed the name and the stock symbol maybe about 30 days ago. But they went public using the Reg A plus. First, they raised their cash. I believe they raised about $15 million, and then it got listed on NASDAQ. So,
And is this NASDAQ or is this OTC over-the-counter stuff, or where do you appear when you appear as some new entity?
good
here?
question. It really depends on what you can qualify for. Most companies qualify for the OTC market, which is over the counter, because they don't really have the requirements. In other
The
words,
capitalization or
yeah,
whatever
the
you-
market cap has to be, like over $250 million market cap. You need to have a $4 stock if you're going to be on NASDAQ. You need to have 3 market makers. There's a whole list of elements you have to have before you can get on a major exchange. A lot of companies don't meet that, so the first place they go is the over-the-counter market, which the requirements are much, much less stringent to
the
get listed
so-called
there.
penny stocks.
Yeah, anything
Right.
under $5 is considered a penny stock, and I'm glad you brought that up because on other shows, excuse me, we're going to be talking about that.
Okay. Well, the takeaway, folks, if you're still writing all this stuff down and rattled by all this, is the Jobs Act change things. And the other takeaway I get is, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's clear to me just listening to this and this quick conversation: don't go it alone.
Oh,
Don't think you can just go in like. And that was the appeal of reward crowdfunding. You really could go it alone. You shoot a cute, passionate video. Help me. I'm going to do this project. I've got this cute product. And people would either pre-order it or they would give you some contribution to help the cause here. Even that's getting more sophisticated. And more and more people say, if you just go on by yourself, you're going to fail. You really do need to have professional marketing, if
Yes.
nothing else, to get found and to convert people into clients here.
It's all about marketing. I mean, you can hire an attorney to put together the SEC documents. You can hire an accountant to do the financials. That's one important element of crowdfunding or private placements or whatever. The critical element is marketing. Unless you have a wide network of investors that you can go to raise money, you're going to fail. So you need to have a marketing budget to do that.
Well, you're one of those rare individuals that seems to have that marketing down to a science here. You've got the connections, you've done it before, and you've got a group of people and the know-how how to do this. How do people reach you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can call me at 951-236-8473, or they can email me at mikebrett@gmail.com. That's Mike Brett, BRETTE, @gmail.com. And they can look at my profile on LinkedIn, too.
Well, and if nothing else, keep tuning in each and every week, because this is really the only place I know you can get this stuff explained to you in real English by somebody who's been doing it a really long time, really well. And from that, you can decide how you're going to piece together your program, which one of these different programs you're going to use to pursue your dream of building your company and raising capital, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We invite you to come back each and every week to Business Pulse right here on OC Talk Radio, Orange County's only community radio station.